on Moodle as we go through. So we're going to start today, we'll start at the beginning, we're going to start talking about major key. We've already discussed why things are stacked in thirds, but as such, what would we describe these chords as? Remember I had two different types of ways of describing stacked notes. What were they last week?
Was it tertial and something else?
Yeah, so these are tertial.
And voicings.
And these are what we call spellings. They are a voicing, but when we spell chords, we tend to spell them in thirds because it's the easiest way to see them stack up. When we get to voicings, we'll have some combinations of thirds, seconds, and fourths, and that's a whole other area which we'll get to towards the middle of the year to look at different sounds and different uses. But so these are spellings at the moment. And of course, there we are, we've got the harmonised major scale with every note available for each chord. And as we discussed last week, how many different types of chords are there? See if you can remember without looking. Six, great. So the two similar ones are. What are the two?
2 and 6.
2 and 6. Yeah, 2 and 6 are the same. All the others are different, and just remember the idea that allows us to, just out of the blue, but at any time to describe which chord we're trying to portray. You know, we don't. That's very descriptive of the part of the scale that we're in, or the chord function, if you like. So let's just run through. So these are what we call full potential chords. Hopefully that's a term which you're used to. The full potential means we've got every note, FPC for short. We've got every note that we can have, and that's for the premise, for the use of the styles of music that we have down the right hand side of the board. So we've got every single note possible there. So we're going to leave some notes out. We can see we've got different sized chords. We've got a 6-note chord, 6, 5, 7. We know when we've got 7, we've got every note available in here. So, but we've got some different sizes. So what we're going to discuss initially, and the first thing is to consider, is why we're leaving some notes out. We discussed this briefly last week. So they're all slightly different reasons. Some of them are harmonic reasons, some of them are for other reasons. But of course the note we're leaving out here is this F. So, as somebody mentioned last week, the problem with the F is that there's a dissonance set up here with the third. This would make a minor ninth interval. So that's a bit of an issue. Of course I can play that too. Oh, we've got a dead note. It's a good start. So this dissonance here sounds like, oh, sorry, just get this. So if I leave that F out, it still sounds a little bit weird in its spelling, but largely there's no dissonance. And of course the other consideration apart from the dissonance is that the third is a really, really important note. So if I was to say, okay, well I won't get rid of the fourth, or the 11th as it is up here, I'll get rid of the third instead. well, that's kind of defeating the purpose of chord one with a tonic key, isn't it? We kind of need to have the major third. In fact, we can do that. We can forget about the third and use the fourth instead. And that becomes a sus version of it. When we say sus, it means a number of things. What can it mean? What are the two things that sus can mean?
You're replacing the third with either the fourth or the second.
Yeah, so it's called a suspension. And something that's suspended, what does it do? It resolves. So it's suspended up and falls down. And generally it refers to 4 going to 3. And that's this sound here. This is great without my C working. I'll have to do it down here. I'll do it in a different key. So that's 1, 4 and 5. And then resolving to the third. But as well as that, we can also have a suspended second, or sus2. So we can have sus4 or sus2. In both cases, they head back to 3. Just gonna find myself a nice pen here. So we could, we don't have to, this chord doesn't have to be this, but we're not looking for a C sus chord, we're looking for a C major chord, because this is chord 1 it's the tonic chord of C major. So it's just that those two notes don't sit happily together. We've got to choose between one or the other. If I play that full spelling, I can play it without the, I can't play it without a C. This is a bit of a problem. Anyway, I'll play it in a D. So this is, just imagine that's in C if we've got perfect pitch. And here it is with the sus4 instead. Even though it's a slightly weird chord, that could be a possibility. So, to move on, what we're doing with chord 1 is we're removing the fourth. It's not an important note to the chord, and it's clashing with the third, which is an important note, and our resulting full potential chord is this. Now don't forget what I said last week, that this is a story which I'm telling you, and even though I'm videoing this, I want you to keep on thinking about developing your story, and I want you to think about taking notes about what I'm saying. If it's all new and you think you remember it, that's fine, but I don't want to get to 6 months or towards the end of the year and say, well, what's the story about major key? I want you to go back to your notes and have a look. So make sure you're being active and writing down any of these ideas, which could be good to add to your story. I'm just seeing a little bit of inertness at the moment in terms of writing things down, so don't be afraid to. On to chord 2. Now this is an interesting one, because the note that's missing is this B up here. Now that's an interesting one to omit, because we've sort of established that the interval, which is the one which is you want to avoid, is a minor ninth. And that's not actually a minor ninth away from anything, it's a major ninth. And I'm using that terminology of a big M for major. That's not actually dissonant. And if I play this chord, and there's the 13th on the top. There's no dissonance in there. It's actually quite a pretty chord. And if we called it D minor 13, which I generally wouldn't, but we'll call it that for a moment. That's a chord which will get used in modal music. Modal music can be centered around the Dorian mode, and of course C major from this chord, if this was chord 1 in the Dorian mode, that would be the chord. So for things like so what, it wouldn't be in this voicing, it'd be in a different voicing, but this is the spelling of chord 1 in the Dorian mode. So things like so what, all those types of things, all those notes would be possible. what voicing we'd use now at the moment. There's another reason we leave this note off here. And, well, does anybody want to tell me why it is? Why am I leaving this B off? Let me leave it to you, Anna.
I can't remember, it's because it makes a tritone with the minor third.
It
And
sounds
it,
too much
it
like
was
a
a
bar.
dominant sound
Yeah, it sounds
with
too
the
much like a
tritone.
bar.
Makes a tritone. I'm going to just go into your reason. So it's a tritone with.
With the minor third, and so it sounds like a dominant chord.
Okay, that's kind of true. It's not the reason I'm thinking of, but it's.
Is it because it's a subdominant chord and function, it's supposed to go to the dominant, and if the B's already there, then you kind of, you're not resolving, the feeling of resolving's not as strong.
Right. So, in as many words, Tom has described the answer. It's a tricky one, this one, but I can tell he's got a reason for this. It's a slightly difficult one to describe. What he said is it's a subdominant chord. We'll get more into all the poles and things. He's quite right, it is a subdominant chord, but then he went on to say that, what did you go on to say?
It's supposed to go to dominant, well, not necessarily, but often the function of subdominant is to lead to dominant, which in this case is the G13, and the B note, they share the B note, which makes it less of a resolution towards the G13.
Did you all get that? So this is a subdominant chord, and if you're a bit curious about that, don't worry, we'll get to describing all these in a minute. But, or not a minute, but in a while. But his point is that it's partnered, and we all know what the 2-5 kind of thing is and how important that is to particularly jazz, but also popular music as well. So these two chords, in that they form a progression, I suppose. What does progression mean? Well, progression just means it's a chordal movement. And this is an essential chordal movement. And the reality is that these two chords are exactly the same, except this one has a C, and the chord 5 has the B. That's another way to say it. Now I'm going to play that voicing in a minute and just make that resolution from the C down to the B, and I will be going from the 2 to the 5. Now, just before I do that, let's look at the notes that I've ended up with if I go from the C to the B. So I've ended up with the D, the F, the A, and the B, and the E and the G, right? So that's what my new chord has become. And that, so we've got the G, we've got the G, we've got the E, we've got the A, we've got the F, we've got the B, and we've got the D. So that there is identical to that, just in a different order. Correct?
Yeah.
Just check the notes off. D, yes, I can see a D in the second one. F, yes. A, yes. B, yes. E, yes. And G, yes. So those two are exactly the same, they're just in a slightly different order. So if I play that to you now, and what I'm going to play to you is this here, even though they are two really similar chords with one note difference, hopefully you'll hear that 2 to 5 movement going on. I'm not going to play the root movement, I'm just going to play the chord. It's the 2 chord. Okay? So here's the 2, and here's the 5. And if I've got enough fingers, I'll play the root movement for you. And here's the 2, 5, 1. So you can hear that is essentially the 2 to 5 movement. Now, with the 2 chord, if I left the B on the top, we don't really know which it is. Is it the 5 or the 2 chord? It's kind of got a little bit of both of them in it. So the reason why we're taking that out is to make a really clear 2 to 5 movement. That's not important in modal music. In modal music, that 2 chord is our 1 chord. We just sit on that that modal, the first mode of the Dorian mode, and muck around with it. So we can leave that in because we're not progressing to 5. Makes sense?
Yep.
Kieran, what do you think?
About,
Can you explain that to me? Sorry, I'm just picking on you, for
Sorry.
no reason.
what the leaving out the B out of D minor?
Yeah,
Yeah, nah, I've always wondered why it doesn't sound right, sitting at a piano, like, trying to play a D minor 13, like, on paper it sounds nice.
Yeah.
Like, but it just, but their movement from that to the 5 just never sounded right because of
Great.
the B.
Okay.
So,
well, that's really nice. That's nice to get your personal thing on it.
yeah.
So you think you could explain through, just what I just talked through?
Yeah, so, I don't know, well, like,
And if you feel comfortable, if you think you've got it, that's okay.
just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, not great at explaining, but.
No, well, you just saw it from, I'm going to ask Alex who's sitting next to you, so just talk us through that one more time.
So if you have a minor 13 chord, if you keep the B in there, or 13 I should say, when you're going to a 5 chord because of the subdominant to dominant,
Yeah,
that kind of gets rid of the resolution of the minor 7th of the 2 chord. the
Great,
1st of the 5
yeah.
chord. So then, if you don't have that 13th, then you get that resolution, and that sounds strong. But then, if we weren't going from subdominant to dominant, it wouldn't matter so much.
great,
Like in modal.
yeah. Because with the C and the B, they're a major 7th and not a minor 9th. The major 7th is a reasonably consonant interval in a chord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cassidy, what do you think? How are you on that?
What else is there to say? I don't know.
Is it you feeling comfortable with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm just testing the waters because you'll start to realise that I really like to make sure everybody's kind of getting there or on the way, and I don't like to move on, so I don't, you'll get used to me talking to you, so we can do that. It's a nice small class. And Jacob, you've probably got that. You've got another way of explaining it. Does that sort of line up with your way of thinking about
I've
it?
always just said that the 7 to the 3, if you're already if you have the 3 of the G and the D, then there's no resolution.
Right. Yeah, and that's what my kind of thing here as well. It's this whole bit in the middle here, and I think like guitarists, they play chords like that. Without I'm not sounding like anti-guitarist, but it's very common. It's the same for keyboard players. There's the chord, move the C in this case down to B, and you've got the dominant chord. They don't have to change it. It's just one finger, isn't it? You do that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really great to get from a guitarist perspective, because guitarists aren't going to play all those notes in a chord because they can't, because there's too many notes and they can't stack thirds like that because the notes, the strings are in fourths, so they'll be like this. But beyond that, whatever voicing he's playing, he's definitely going to have a C in the 2 chord and definitely going to have a B in the 5 chord. Might have a flat 9th or a 13th or something else. So that resolution is essential. Yeah. So it's an interesting way to think about it, isn't it? It's an interesting way to think about that. Anna, how are you going with it? Is that good?
I guess so. Like,
You feeling comfortable?
I guess what you another way of looking at it is if you played like every note on every chord, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So the ones you leave out give them a flavour.
Yeah, that can be true too. Yeah, there is some dissonance in some of them.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one because there's not really a dissonance. So there's another harmonic reason. The B in the 2 chord would be fine, and it is in modal music. So this is just a slightly unusual one. Yeah. So that's fun. We're getting there, and we're not going to stop ourselves as we go through this. You can always go back to the video, and we can keep thinking about it, and you can come and talk to me, and we'll keep covering over it in the next few weeks. Okay, let's move on. We move on to chord 3, and this is missing a couple of notes. which is these two here. I probably should do them in different colours, but we're missing the F and the C. What can you tell me about those two notes in relation to dissonance?
So minor ninth with the F. And the root, yeah.
They both set up a minor ninth, don't they? The F sets up a minor ninth to the E, and the C sets up a minor ninth to the B. Can you see that? So both these, there's a minor ninth, and there's another one. So for that reason, it's good enough as it is, and if I play this to you. So that's a reason enough to remove it. There's another reason, and let me just draw a little bit of something up here, and we're going to start to think about this, and I didn't know that we were today, but we will. So I guess I call this the cycle of harmony. And this is just, I wish I had a black pen. This is the idea of tonic to subdominant to dominant. And we'll talk a lot about this year. And these, of course, also we call poles, or they involve poles. I'm sure these are all terms, that might be a term you're used to, but poles certainly will be, and these three areas will be. So what we observe in theory, and we'll get to this when we write harmony, is that in general terms, harmonic movement works in this way. The tonic is our chord of rest. It's the chord that we go to when we've resolved all our harmony. It's us sitting at home on the couch at night, watching telly, we've been out, we've done our stuff for the day, we're resting, we're resolved. But as you all know, during COVID, when you had to stay home all the time, you got really sick of it. So harmony, like our lives, means that after a while we're going to get sick of being at home and being resolved and happy, and we're going to want to go on a bit of a journey. And our journey starts by going to the supermarket, to jazz school, to the gym, wherever you might go. It's because you've got to eat, you've got to exercise. You will know you've got to come to jazz school, otherwise you get in trouble with Sharon. And that's what the subdominant chord is. And we'll start to name these chords. These are chord 2 and 4. And the nature of those chords are, they're not like the tonic, they're not our happy place. You couldn't live at jazz school all the time, although you do spend lots of hours here, depending on how much you practice. But you can go here and be reasonably happy for a while, but you know that you've got to move on in some ways. We'll play the nature of these chords in a minute. And when you move on, you move to the dominant chord, which can be chord 5, or possibly chord 7, not so much in the major key, but we'll discuss that. And the dominant chord is the supermarket on the way home. Damn, I put supermarket here. Anyway, but particularly we're going to buy some ice cream and some frozen chicken. And the dominant chord is peculiar to the subdominant, is that it has a real need to resolve, because it's going to melt. And that need to resolve is called the what?
Tension.
The tritone. Tritone has to resolve inwards and outwards. Why?
It's both notes are a semitone apart from the notes of the one chord.
But what is it about that interval?
Crunchy.
It's really unsettled. It's the most unsettled interval we have. It has to resolve. You're kind of right, but it's just really unsettled. So we've got our ice cream that's melting, and we've got to go home, and we have the tritone resolving, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, and we come to the tonic again. So in general terms, that journey is something we'll talk about a lot this year in terms of major key and minor key, and we'll describe the chords and listen to them and make assumptions about them in due course. Now why I brought it up now is because all these chords sit in these poles, and I'm just going to name them for now, and we'll get to the reasons why in a minute. But the tonic pole isn't just chord 1, it's also chord 3 and it's also chord 6. And what we're going to address now is why that is, and you might already know. Why do you think it is? Why are 1, 3 and 6 all in the tonic pole?
Got the same notes in them.
They've pretty much got the same notes in the same order. I mean, because we're in C, most of these chords all have the same notes in them eventually, don't they? But how the order of them means that chord 1, chord 3 and chord 6 are largely just the same stack of notes with a different bottom note.
They have the same
Right.
chord notes as well.
And they've got the same, well, that's the point I'm getting to, isn't it? So and we can see that chord 3 here is, all we've done really is just taken the bottom note off. It's not there anymore. And chord 6, we come over here, is chord 1 from there up, but we've taken the 6th and put it on the bottom. So really, they're pretty much the same order of notes, just slightly different. Agreed? So another reason why we take the F out of chord 3 and the C out, is that what is good for chord 1 is good for chord 3 because they're essentially the same chord. They're just doing exactly the same thing. So we remove the F from chord 1, it's gone from here, and we've removed the root because it's not in the chord. But the root, as we've described, would set up a minor 9 down to the B. So there's two good reasons, dissonance and the pole reason for poles. What's good for chord 1 is good for chord 3. Yeah? Have you thought about it like that before? Okay, so that might be worth noting down if you haven't considered that. Okay, we'll move on from chord 3 and we'll keep this in mind as we're going. And chord 4, well, this is an interesting one because this has got everything in it. And we just don't have any reason to take anything out. There's no minor ninths, there's a major ninths between the C here and the D on the top. But largely, it's a fairly consonant chord. So there's not really too much more to say about that. They're all consonant. If we can leave them all in, we certainly will. So no need to take anything out. It's a wonderful sounding chord and gets used a lot with everything in it and the different voicings as well. Okay, let's move on to chord 5. Now the only note we're missing out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the C here. Now we've kind of already described that because if that C was a B, it would largely be chord 2. So remember chord 2 has the C in it, or the D minor has the C in it, the 4th, and chord 5 has the 3rd. So we've removed it from there. If it was there also, it would set up a minor ninth to the 3rd. So there's really two reasons we're getting rid of it. We don't want it because it's not consonant in the chord. It's a major chord. We don't want the fourth competing with it. And there I'm putting the C in and resolving it to the third. So that's the 2-5 movement again. Not brilliant voices, but not too bad. So, why does that do that? I thought already. It's on airplane mode. Somebody explain.
I do focus.
Is your Wi-Fi still on?
I know, but wouldn't airplane mode do? Isn't that the whole point of it?
Try that focus button. It'll shift to all applications.
I'll turn the Wi-Fi. Oh, it's just, it doesn't work. It's just distracting. Okay, so really two reasons. It's got minor ninth. We just discussed in the 2-5 movement that one chord has the C and one chord has the B. That's the nature of that 2-5 movement. So there's two really good reasons there.
Wouldn't resolve to one very well either if it's.
Yeah, I mean,
It's already got the C in it.
it's really interesting. In some theories, it drives me crazy with this, they'll say a 13th chord and they'll leave the 11th in there. You know, I mean, this is a particularly American theory, you know, saying, it's G13, and the F's still there, you know. So, 13th chords, you have to assume that the 11th's not there. It's just an assumption you've got to make. That doesn't exist. Not to say you can't have the fourth and the third sitting together in a dominant chord. Beweven's did it a lot, or for that matter on a major one chord. It is a possible tonality and a texture, but we're talking about, you know, theory from the ground root here, so we're not going to deny ourselves the opportunity to do that, but at this stage we are. Okay, let's deal with chord 6. So we're missing, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes. So the note we're missing there is the F on the top. Is that dissonant to? Yes, it is. So it's dissonant, it's the minor ninth away from E, right? So that would be this here. But again, what is good for chord 1 is good for chord 6 because they're in the same pole. And we've got rid of the F in chord 1 and chord 3. So really this chord, another way to look at it, so what have we got? G, B, D, no F, and we've got, I know this is getting ridiculously high on the top, but that's an A up there. So if I took the A from the bottom and put it on the top, it's exactly the same as that. So it's just a one note revoicing of it. So the F is gone, and we end up with minor 11th. All good? And lastly, chord 7. Chord 7 is an interesting one. Before we describe what's happened to this, what is the harmonic function of chord 7?
Dominant.
No. How are we going to use it? It has a very important role, this chord. Think about it. What's it going to? It's going to prepare something.
5 minor.
It's going to prepare good. The 5 of the relative minor. What is the relative minor of C here? A minor? And its dominant, or 5 chord, will be this one by the time we turn it into a secondary dominant. E will be the 7 flat 9. That's largely its role. In the poles here of the cycle of harmony, given that I've put it in the dominant pole, you might assume that you could go from 7 to 1. That would be a strong movement. The reality is, particularly in the major key, it just isn't. And it doesn't get used very much. just not a very strong movement. It's much stronger in the minor key when we get to it, but in the major key it's not very strong. So it's important to have this chord in a format that will be a good 2 chord and a 2-5-1 in the minor key, and there is that relationship. So I need to just make sure that this functions as that, because it doesn't function as much else. It's not a very good dominant chord going to 1, and you're right. So I mean, you're not wrong, but it's not very effective in that role. So we can almost sort of go backwards. What's a good 2 chord for a minor 5 chord, or a minor chord in a dominant chord in a minor key? Well, we know it's half diminished. And we know the full potential of that is half diminished 11th. No, 9th, or half diminished add 11. Now that's sort of going backwards a little bit, and that's exactly what we've got. We've got B half diminished, and this is the E on the top, and that's the add 11. That's of course exactly what we want. Let's just have a wee look at the other notes that are available and the problems that they cause. Well, the first one is the C here. Now, in any half diminished chord, the minor 9th is a real problem. That's why when we have half diminished chords, we tend to make them major 9ths, right? We say Lydian with a major 9th, we'll put a major 9th on, because otherwise it sounds like this. Normally that will be, we'll generally make that a major 9th, and of course it's a minor 9th away from the root, so that's a real problem. So we don't want that C in there. The last note to consider is the G on the top. And that's isn't really dissonant. It's not a minor 9th to anything. And this is probably the last, and I'm glad it's the last chord because I kind of don't really know why it's not there. But it's sort of the 13th, and it has no place in a half diminished chord. And that's getting back to me saying, well, what's really the function of this chord?
Does it make it sound too much like a 5?
It makes it sound a little bit too much like the 5, because it is basically the 5, or the root of the 5 chord on the top, on the bottom. But if I leave it there and complete the progression I just played, it's actually quite nice. It's not dissonant. It's a possibility. But it's kind of an extraneous note. It's probably the reason, or the note which there's the least reason to do away with. It's consonant, but it doesn't fulfill a harmonic purpose, I suppose. Okay, so that's my sort of story through the full potential chords. We have got, I haven't asked you a question yet today, John. So we're going to go, I want you to start with chord 1, and I want you to tell me your story. You do chord 1 and Cam's next.
The one is the tone base, the tonic, and so
Correct.
anything that makes it sound not resolved, we wouldn't necessarily want in the chord. The sus4 is specifically a non-resolved sound, and so we can't have it in all the other notes there.
It's either or, isn't it? It's the yin and yang of a major chord, isn't it? You could have the third, or you could have the fourth, but you can't have both. Because, yeah. Great. Cam, chord 2.
Chord 2, the full potential is minor 11.
Yep.
But minor 13 is possible in modal music when that's considered the 1, I guess. But we leave the 13 out, which is a B. because the B is, its role is in like the 5, what is it, C to B is an important thing to get from 2 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can he be any stronger with that statement? Can you be any stronger with that statement?
Could try.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
The 2 to 5 movement is just that 2 chord, one with the C in it and one with the B in it. All the other notes can be in exactly the same place, can't they?
Yeah.
So I think that's where you're heading.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll look at some voicings. I think we'll see that in voicings later on. Yeah, and that, yeah, okay. Can you relate that to your own playing to voicings?
Yeah. You can,
Just that one movement?
yeah. If you like sit on just the C and you don't resolve it, then it becomes like a sus sound.
Yes.
Um,
So what is the sus sound then?
the sus sound is the 3rd, not being there.
Yeah. So what is 5 sus?
5 sus.
If the C is the sus sound, when you're relating it to the 5 chord, what is 5 sus?
Is it subdominant?
No, what I'm getting to is it's 2 over 5, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's 2 with a 5 bass. I'm sorry if I was being a bit oblique from what my answer was, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a confusion for people, you know, that 5 sus is just 2 over 5. We've got the 2 chord and we haven't gone C to B, we just keep the C there, we just go plonk the G in the bass. And so 2 over 5, even with the 13th and the 11th and all those notes on it, is exactly what 5 sus is. Not just the triad but the sus, but all the extra notes as well. Yep, good. Cassie, you want to have a go at chord 3?
Yeah, sure. The F and the C create minor ninths with the E and the B respectively.
Yeah.
And I also wrote what is good for chord 1 is good for 3 because of the whole group.
Yeah. So in just writing that, do you agree with that? That like what's good for 3, 1 is good for 3? Or is that, I mean, it's fine if it's kind of just a
Yes.
thing at the moment.
It's kind of just a statement. I do understand it, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't
You're
know
not
how to
gonna-
explain that.
You're not going to tattoo it on your arm, just
No.
yet. Okay, but so we'll keep working on why that is, because we will when we do, because we're going to do lots of harmony coming up. So that will be good. Great, and at chord 4. Tell me about that.
Sorry, did you say Anna?
I did, sorry.
I thought you said Anne, sorry.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I swallowed mine.
Yeah, chord 4 gets all the notes.
Yep.
Did I write?
Is there much of a story? There's not a lot, is there? I mean, it does get all its notes, but why do we not have to take any out?
Okay, so it's got a major 3rd, so, wait, what is my problem? I don't know. What? Oh, the sharp 4 isn't dissonant with the major 3rd, so.
Nice, yep.
That's fine.
Yeah, a normal 4th would be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's good, there's no dissonance,
Yeah.
it's consonant sounding chords, and harmonically it's not a problem, because some of the things that we've dealt with have been for harmonic reasons. So, no, you're absolutely right. That's good. Jacob, tell me about chord 5.
And it's got the tritone in there, you know,
Yep.
the main thing, which obviously resolves to the 1 chord. It can't have the 11, cause the 4 clashes with 3.
Yep.
Which is why you skip the 11 while there's a hole in it.
Yep.
Which jumps from 9 to 13. There's the minor 9th interval in there as well.
Awesome, so really, really strong reasons, aren't they? Yeah. So it has to have the tritone, and it's not something we really discussed. But the tritone, we'll look at this a little bit in the stories we go through, but the tritone is really important to that sound, and it's important to the cycle of harmony and pulses. It's why harmony works, is the resolution of the dominant chord, is why we have harmony. It's the centre of it, it's the ice cream melting, and I've got to get home. Awesome, and Kieran, chord, what about you, 6?
Chord 6. It's a tonic chord, and all the tonic chords leave out the F or the
Yeah.
or the I guess.
Nice, good.
What else?
Do you want to do a wee comparison between that and chord 1?
Okay.
Just in terms of the stack of notes, I mean, they're an octave apart.
Yeah. Well, they all have they both have pretty similar notes in general, like
Yeah.
A, C, E, G, B,
Yeah.
E. But it's just the order of in which they're stacked, I guess.
Yep.
Compared to so I think that's probably the big difference between
Nice.
6 and 1.
Yeah, 6 is really just 1 with the top note down on the bottom.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Another way to think of it. Awesome, and Alex, last one, probably the trickiest, called 7.
Doesn't have the 9 because will be flat 9, which is a minor 9th away from the root.
Yeah.
And doesn't have the 13, which I think was because that wouldn't make sense because it would kind of change the role of the chord. Because
Right.
we want it to be the 2 and like a minor 2/5.
Awesome, yeah.
So relative minor.
Really like that, yeah. There's not a problem in that voice, it's quite a nice one to put in, although I just don't think we do very much. Chord players, do you ever put the 13th in, I mean, it's very uncommon. I can't even think of a voicing as a pianist that includes that. I quite like it, just playing it, but it's not, doesn't seem to be a thing. Awesome, really cool. Okay, so, nice going. I hope you're all kind of used to my slightly confrontational way of teaching. But you've got through the first one, you know what to expect now. This is how I like to do things. I really like to, with a small class, make sure we're all together, okay? So, that's all right, isn't it? So I hope you're okay with it, and we'll just keep down, and you keep asking me things, and this is just, we can just discuss things. This isn't a me to just talking to you. I really want to make sure that you're on board with it. But great, really impressed with everybody's knowledge through here. This is quite tricky stuff, you know, this is a story, but this is the basis of our harmony, so we need to get this stuff right. Okay, enough of me rambling on. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit more on this when we come to harmony, but we can just use these chords on the piano without a middle C. I'll play it D. You know, these are nice chords. Trying to play as many notes as I can. Diatonic harmony is fine. It's nice. It's probably just a bit nice after a while. It becomes a little bit bland. And I'm not going to talk about examples at the moment, but I want you to keep thinking about, and we will certainly address this when we come to write harmony, when you hear what we would call diatonic harmony. What does diatonic mean? Have you heard this term lots? Anna, you know, you hear, what does it mean to you?
Like in the so that's their diatonic 2 C major, so they have the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B.
Great. So, I guess another way of you're absolutely right, another way to say it is of the key.
Yeah.
You know, so when we're in diatonic, it means we're only using notes of the key. I would have been playing in C there, but I don't have a C on the piano, so I was playing in D. But I was diatonic to D at the time, but everything sounds like that. And also, our functions, and I was generally playing things that moved in this direction, but we can go backwards in some cases, but, and I actually ended on the 2 chord. I don't know if you noticed that, and I didn't resolve to 1. And at the moment, you're still at jazz school, and but you haven't been getting ice cream yet. So you didn't get any resolution, and you're not home. So that leaves me a little bit unresolved. In fact, I'll just resolve it. And there we are, now I'm home because I'm harmonically sitting up a little bit. So, in our diatonic chords, and Jacob was just talking a bit about this, you know, we've got one very important, probably the most compelling movement is the 5 to 1 because of the tritone. Here we've got this tritone sitting in this key. The B and the F, and that really needs to, sorry. So, but yeah, the augmented fourth, or the tritones, called tritones because it's 3 tones. 3 tones is a augmented fourth, or it's also a diminished fifth. Those all mean the same thing. It's used to be called the devil's interval. It was outlawed for a long time.
When was this? I saw a video, it's the devil in music, it was the devil to sing, had no correlation to the church apparently.
Well, it's a really interesting one. We'll go into that. Yeah. So I have scanned, and that's really
It's hard to sing.
That's hard to sing.
Yeah.
And they didn't in medieval times. You were talking about Gregorian chant times. Things generally just in triads or 2 parts moving. But this interval didn't occur. Interestingly, one of the reasons is, and we'll come back to this with the major third, is that, I mean, the church, of course, was everything. It was pre-Reformation. The church was all-powerful. You know, the church has ruled everything, like around today, but it was how it was in Western areas where harmony was developing, France and Britain and all those sorts of places. And 3 tones. Well, what's the church all about? What's 3 in the church?
Trinity.
The Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, right? So 3 tones, you're not going anywhere with 3. You know, that's the only 3 we're having is the theocratic 3, which is the Holy Trinity. So that's one numeric thing about it, but and also, as you say, it's a difficult interval to sing. We'll come up to that 3 thing a little bit later on with the major third, but that's a really interesting idea. But it is a tricky interval, and it's got a tricky sound, and it needs to resolve one of 2 ways. So in this case, and we're dealing with G13 there, coming to C major, and when that resolves, it generally comes in that direction. So the 3rd and the 7th of that chord come into the root and the 3rd of C7. Have any of you heard of the term cadence? Who said yes? You did? So what does that mean, John?
It's just like a generally 2-chord resolution.
Well, that's a cadence, isn't it? Yeah, so 5 to 1's a cadence. What's another cadence?
Like 4 minor to 1 or something.
Yeah, 4 to 1, 4 minor to 1, 2 to 5. Did you any of you do classical music where you had to learn your cadence and perfect cadence, interrupted cadence, all those things? So it's just a movement of chords. It doesn't necessarily need to be to 1. It can sometimes be to 5. It can be to 6, but it's the end point of harmony, I suppose. Cadence actually means, any other words that come up from cadence in music? Cadenza? What's a cadenza? Ideas?
Like a free.
Yes, you're right. We have cadenzas in jazz, so you can get to the end of a piece of music and a soloist can just get to the last chord or the penultimate chord, and it can be like a big altered chord, and they can just do a big cadenza and just play lines and lines and lines over the top of it. That's cadenza. But also in a classical concerto of the classical era, but also after that, they would have a section where the soloist would just make up some music. Before the turn of last century, 1900, classical musicians could improvise. It was part of what they learned how to do. It only really changed from the 1800s into the 1900s. So concertos, if you're a clarinet player or a piano player or a flute player, if you played a concerto with an orchestra, you would get to a part where the orchestra just stopped, usually on 1/5 chord, and you'd be expected to play a cadenza of your own making. Now, as people started to have less ability to make up their own improvised cadenzas, they would often play one written by a composer. And often cadenzas were written by a composer for a concerto by another composer. So Mendelssohn wrote cadenzas for Beethoven piano concertos. So it all kind of got muddled up. Liszt wrote a lot for Mozart and all sorts of things. So that's what a cadenza was there. Going a little bit off topic, but basically cadenza means to fall in Italian. To fall. And specifically where that comes from is the resolution of the seventh of a dominant chord to the third of a one chord. That fall is where that term cadence comes from. So, we talked about this, all sorts of cadences that could possibly be. This is the daddy of them all, and that movement is what it's all about. This is what harmony is all about, the resolution of the dominant in this way. So we've got one note falling by a semitone and another note coming up by a semitone. So far so good. That resolution is really important. Now, just to make things slightly more difficult, but we're going to look at this briefly now, not only does the tritone fall that way, I'm just going to rub these other two, oh, not that one, these other two notes out for a minute. Not only does it fall inwards, but it can also fall outwards. And I'll play this to you in a minute. A second. So instead of going inwards a semitone, it can go outwards a semitone. So here is that one again. One time I need my C. So the second and the third can swap around. So not only is this a tritone of G7, when we swap those around, this becomes the seventh and third of D flat 7, which is the 5 chord for G flat, and that's the root and third of G flat. Why? Why does that occur? What is something special about the tritone? What is something about special?
It's the same both ways. If you invert it, it's still the same interval.
Yeah, so why is that? Why does it do that?
It's halfway between the 12 notes.
It bisects the scale exactly. So tritones is 6 semitones, right? And how many semitones in the whole chromatic scale? 12. So these are good things to just think about. We'll deal with these quite a bit later on. So the tritone bisects, that is, cuts in half the whole chromatic scale. For that reason, and we'll talk about symmetry of the scale, but without wanting to go too deep into it just at the moment, it means that third and seventh can also be the seventh and the third of another dominant chord. And that there is the basis for tritone substitution, isn't it? It's the fact that we can have a chord with a tritone in it, and it can also be a tritone in another dominant chord. So what is the third and seventh of G13 or G7? Can we swap those around, become the seventh and the third of another chord? The root of that chord just also so happens to be a tritone away. So tritone substitution has two relevant meanings. That means that we're taking the tritone and swapping the third and seventh around, but also the root of those two chords will be a tritone away from each other. Now we'll connect the maths up as we go on. Now you know a lot of that, but again, and this is the whole point of this class, is just to really discuss it and try and get into the different things of it. So I want you to consider both those things that tritone substitution is about, not only the tritone swapping around, but the fact that the root of those two chords will be that. Now that is such an, I'm going to try it somewhere else so I can get notes that work. That's a really interesting sound. You can try that on your own. As did Mozart and Haydn very early on. They were using the tritone as the basis of heading off in a different key direction. You know, the classical era was difficult up to that point to change keys because not a lot of instruments could play in different keys. You had your French horns, they didn't have any vowels, they just had chunks of pipe they'd stick in the end, and playing different keys for keyboard instruments, as we will discover as we get through the year, was very problematic. So it really wasn't, well, Bach wrote 12 preludes and fugues, two of each in all the keys. So he was, we'll catch up with all that. But very early on, this idea of the tritone was being used. Certainly not a thing just of jazz. Okay, so what have we covered? We're getting a little bit deeper. We've covered the idea that the tritone sits in the middle of a dominant chord, and it resolves either inwards or it can also resolve outwards, and that's the basis of tritone substitution. But anyway, it's a very unstable interval and it really needs to resolve. So we went a little bit of a deep dive there, and I'm going to rub that off now. But we can keep thinking about that because we are going to get to tritone substitution shortly. But if the tritone in the 5 chord is all about this most important movement from 5 to 1, and if the rest of harmony, if I just play diatonically, sounds a bit bland or a bit beige, why don't I set up some more tritones? Because this movement's great. I really like this. This is strong. And the point of harmony, or harmony getting better, is that we want to progress more. We want to move on. We want more ice cream. We want to get home. We want to go and do more things. We don't just want to sit at home and being bland and beige. So, thus, secondary dominance. We've got our primary dominant, and we're going to introduce secondary dominance because we're going to have more tritone resolution. That's a good thing. We're going to set up lots of nice little bits of tritones. But remember, the tritone has to resolve. It's the devil's interval. It really wants to resolve. So let's have some more let's have some more dominant movements. I mean, I can go from chord 1 to chord 4, and if I turn chord 1 into a dominant chord, the tritone resolving to chord 4 is going to be stronger than what I had before. It has to be, because of that tritone movement. So, secondary dominance, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to create dominance out of chords that we can turn into dominance. Now I've only got 6 there, and I did have 7 chords before. I've got 6 secondary dominants. So the key there is I'm going to turn chords into dominance where I can. And for a chord to be a dominant, it has to be able to resolve down a fifth. Now the key thing with this process is we're not changing key. We're staying in key, and we're introducing an accidental, which is going to facilitate the tritone and therefore the dominant movement. But as soon as we've done that dominant chord, it's going to resolve to a diatonic chord of where we were. And that's essential. Otherwise, we're changing key. And that's not what this is about. This is possibilities in a major key, not in the number of major keys. We can use dominance later on to change key, but it's essential to make sure that we're not changing key. So, the first one we're going to deal with here is chord 1. What do I need to do to turn chord 1 into dominant? Well, I've got a major third and a major 7th. So, I'm going to flatten the 7th. And it's going to give me C13. Now let's just think as we go through about the scales involved here. We didn't think too much about scales before because I think we kind of know them modally in the major scale. What happens when we take a C major or C Ionian and flatten the 7th? What do we end up with?
Into Mixolydian.
C Mixolydian. Taking C Ionian or major, just stick a flattened third in it, C Mixolydian. So C Mixolydian in its full potential is a 13th chord. How do I know that? Because here it was here. That was G Mixolydian, and that's the chord. Okay, so when I take that, here it was here. C major 7. So I'm setting up the movement there, chord 1, major 7th, to 4, back to 1. You are so beautiful to me. And there is that movement of 1, major 1, dominant 1, turning it into progression. Okay, so far so good. Let's go on to chord 2. So chord 2, before we do anything to it, what's it got? It's got a minor 3rd and a flattened 7th. So the flattened 7th is good with a dominant 7th, but we need to get a major 3rd happening. So let's think about the notes of D Dorian. Think about all the white notes on the keyboard going up from D. If we raise the 3rd, what does that become? D Dorian with an F sharp. Mixolydian again. So that's interesting, isn't it? Take Dorian, raise the 3rd, becomes Mixolydian. Take major, flatten the 7th, they become Mixolydian. I don't know really what that is, but that's the way it goes, isn't it? So again, D mix and D30. And that's going to be my movement. And of course, those two are in exactly the same form as our primary dominant, which is chord 5. We call those two, and chord 5, our major secondary dominants because they resolve to chords with a major 3rd. And you can see the chord, the major 3rd of the chord that resolves to in both cases, there. So C13's got the A on the top, and then it's going to resolve to F, and that's the third of F sitting there. So that will make sense. Okay, let's go to chord 3 now. So chord 3 was in this form here, and so it's Phrygian at the moment. Think of just the notes of E Phrygian, which is all the white notes from E going up. So we've got a flat 7th, and we're going to need to raise the 3rd to get a dominant chord out of it. So there it is there. Come on. So what sort of scale have we ended up with by taking E Phrygian and introducing a G sharp only? Remember, I'm only adding the notes I need to bring about the dominant chord. I'm not changing anything else.
Yeah, Phrygian dominant.
Phrygian dominant, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a name?
I don't know, Boris, Phrygian dominant?
Yeah, Phrygian. Have you used Phrygian dominant before?
I've, that was the first name I heard.
Okay, that's great. I haven't really heard that.
Yeah, it's all that.
So it's Phrygian with a major 3rd, yeah?
Yeah.
Any other names? So let me we'll just throw it up here so remember we took E Phrygian and we raised the 3rd. So we've had Phrygian dominant, dominant like it. We'll put Boris up there, we'll come back to that. Can you see anything else in there? This looks a bit strange here, doesn't it? I can see a bit of A minor there. Ba-da-da-da-dum. Yeah? Bom, 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 dee-da. So I can see A minor harmonic.
The 5th mode
Can't write anymore. Tricky one with that there. It really can't be anything else, can it? Bom, 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 dee, da, 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 da. Yeah, so it's definitely a harmonic. It's got that minor 3rd between the flat and 6th and the raised 7. So, but from the E, because I want to name it from here, I would have to call it A harmonic minor 5 mode, which is enough for. So one of our teachers, Bob Hines, came up with the term Boris, just because, I don't know, it's just something to call it. But that's really what it is. Yeah, Phrygian dominant, I suppose, but really it's A harmonic minor from the 5th. So that's where the Boris idea comes from. That's essentially what it is. It's very simple to sort of. So we'll call this E Boris, or A harmonic minor 5 mode. 5th mode of A harmonic minor. Okay, so far so good. Let's go straight to chord 7. Now chord 7 has a minor 3rd and a flattened 7th. It's got a diminished 5th. Well, we're going to raise the 3rd, but we really want a perfect 5th as well, for a number of reasons. But so anyway, we're going to make 2 changes to this. We're going to put 2 accidentals in. So if we think about B, and you can do this, you can come right back to the root. Think about B, what's the last mode called again? B Locrian, thank you. And we're going to raise the 3rd, and we're going to raise the 5th. Well, it ends up being exactly the same. Ba, 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 ba. Or E minor. Ba, da, da, ba, ba, B, D, D. So it's the same thing, isn't it? It's exactly the same. It's become Boris again. So, be Boris. Now, I just alluded to before, remember I said that the third of where these are going to resolve, it's important that we leave the other notes there because they're going to resolve to important notes in the chords that they resolve to. So B augmented 7 is going to resolve to E minor, which is chord 3. And notice this up here, which is the G, is the third of E minor. Likewise, notice that the C here is the third of where that's going to go, which is A minor. So all the notes that are there are important to the ones that come after. And the last one, which is the A, and what do we need to do to this A to get a tritone in it? Well, we need to have a raised third, and that's pretty much all we need to do. But what's this B flat doing up here? Well, we can have this chord as just A augmented 9, which that would become, which is D melodic 5 mode. But in general terms, what we do is we give it a flat 9 as well, simply for ease, in that all our minor secondary dominants become the same. We just throw another note in there. Don't have to, but it's just for kind of ease and for uniform purposes at this stage. So that's kind of the end of the story. It's an interesting one, and look, we can count out how many notes have we introduced. We've got a B flat, we've got a C sharp, we've got an E sharp. We've already got a C sharp there, we've already got a B flat, and we've got an F sharp. Did I say E sharp?
Yeah.
B flat, C sharp. That's an F sharp, isn't it? I'll start again. I've got a B flat. Next one I've got an F sharp. I've got it's a G sharp. And a C sharp. And a E flat, which we've already got. We've already got an F sharp, and we've got a D sharp. Which are actually all the black notes. That's the pentatonic black notes in the key of C. So we've used kind of everything up. But the important thing to note and to emphasize that all the other notes in the chord remain diatonic to the key of C, with the exception of that F sharp in chord 7 and the B flat in chord 6. So that's the story of the secondary dominants. So before I was playing my harmony, it's now going to become so it just gives us so much more a rich harmonic language to use. All those secondary dominants, and we will certainly look at examples of this when we get to harmony, because this will be very much our path to look through those things.
Just the 6 and the 7, is there a reason why they're written with the E and the F sharp, but also supposed to be augmented?
Yeah, so good question, thanks Tom. So why augmented and not flat 13th? It's just a little bit of, I don't know, it's just habit really. I sort of learned it that way. I do see people write flat 13, flat 9, because it's not really an augmented fifth, because the fifth is already there. I mean, it's still there.
Yeah.
And we'd generally expect to put an augmented if we were going to move the current fifth out. If you write flat 13, flat 9, that's fine. It's just a little bit. Generally, the other reason is in the voicings of these, we won't have the fifth there, because the flat 13 is very close to it. So the voicing would actually just do away with the fifth. And if you want to write flat 13, flat 9, you go ahead. Okay, so how's that through there? All pretty fine? Is that where, I think you've probably all come through that before. Anything new for anybody? Any new thoughts? Your brain's getting a bit fried now, we'll finish up shortly, so don't worry. You can use your last brain cells on answering this question. All good? Makes sense? So 3 minor secondary dominants, they're all Boris chords, augmented 7, flat 9, flat 13, flat 9, they all resolve to minor chords, and then our 3 major secondary dominants, which all resolve to chords with a major third, and they're all 13th chords. Yeah, so, and the last thing I'll just mention, just in passing, is look at the 2 chords that prepare them. So they are all the same within those 2 groups. So the major chords are all prepared by Dorian 2 chords, which makes sense because the primary dominant had a Dorian 2 chord before it, the primary dominant being G13, that's got a Dorian chord before it. So all these, given that they're exactly the same chords, also have Dorian. Other way to think of it is, what was that chord before we flattened and turned it into a minor chord? It was mixolydian with a flat third is Dorian. So these are all really interesting things to come back to. This one was Aeolian, and it still can be Aeolian, and that's an interesting one actually. That can stay Aeolian, or you can go Dorian with that. Actually, I've kept it Aeolian there. That should have an F sharp if it's Dorian. My brain's gone too. And the last ones is the 2 chord preparing the minor secondary dominants, and that's why I sort of banged on about chord 7 being important to be in that form, because there it is there, which is just chord 7. We haven't done anything to that, that's just chord 7. And here are the ones that prepare these minor secondary dominants. So what was this before we flattened the 5th on it to get a minor 7 flat 5? It was E Phrygian. Take E Phrygian and flatten the 5th, what do you get? E Locrian. So exactly the same, Locrian. And what do I get when I take F Lydian, and all I want to do to that is raise the root to get that 2 chord for that. Take F Lydian and raise the root, what do you get?
Locrian as well.
F sharp Locrian. So are those really interesting things? Those small changes, you make the one change necessary, and all of a sudden it turns into another scale. So I go, we start talking about scales, because scales and chords are really the same thing at this point, I just think one is interchangeable for the other. But isn't that really interesting to consider those through there? That's nice if you can do that mental maths and try and work through in your head. If you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, I'm in the key of E flat, I'm going to go through and think about my secondary dominants and their 2 chord preps, think about, if you can think through that, it's really good. I mean, I find it hard too, because I'm going through some mental gym, just coming back up to speed with this with you, but part of this is a little bit of mental gym work, so you can get into thinking about things. I think we've done enough. So, next week we're going to whip into diminished. Somebody tell me where diminished chords come from, in 3 words.
Top 4 notes with 5, 7, flat 9 chord.
Yeah, the middle of minor secondary dominants. Only come from the middle of minor secondary dominants, don't they? And there are the 3 minor secondary dominant chords. And here are our 12 diminished chords. That's the only place diminished chords come from, is from the middle of minor secondary dominant chords, with one exception, flat 3 diminished descending. That's where they come from. All those 12 diminished chords are different, and they are all in versions of G sharp diminished, all in versions of C sharp diminished, and all in versions of D sharp diminished. So those 3 minor secondary dominants cough up the 12 diminished chords,
Because we were
because they're all separate, aren't they? They're all different. See how they're all different, all based on a different route? Don't worry, I mean, your brains are a bit fried by now, so but I'm just sort of just leading you into next week. So that's what we're gonna talk about, and then we're gonna carry on, we're gonna, do trilane substitution again, but we started to look at that today, but we're gonna go through the process of trilane substitution. And then we're gonna talk about subdominant minor and Lydians, and then that's pretty much the end of it. So I'm really hoping we can get through that chunk next week to finish them off. But I'm hoping you're rethinking things, learning some new things, just filling in the story, right? And it's really great, you'll know a lot of it. If you come up against things that you go, oh shit, I've totally forgotten that, or you might have missed it in class, come and see me, talk to me about it, talk to each other about it, don't be afraid to do that. Go back over the video, have a look, just bring it up in class, you know, that's the nature of it. As I say, it's really nice if we can all come through on this journey together. We're probably all at slightly different paces with this, but we don't mind, it's good if we can all keep up, that's great. Thanks very much, see you next week.